Welcome to the Higher Ground Calvary Chapel School of Ministry. We are still doing our cults module. It's entitled The Damned Deceptions. We're up to class 7, and today we're going to be talking about the topic of prophets. So let's open in prayer. Heavenly Father, just be with us right now. We ask you to lead us and guide us. Father, I pray that you would expose the deceptions of the cults. Father, I pray that you would draw people out of the cults and into your truth. Just now lead us and guide us and teach us more about how we can minister to those who are caught in the cults. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so for this class, I just want to come back to something that Jesus said regarding the prophets. In Matthew 7:15, he said, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves." He tells us in Matthew 24 and in chapter 25 that in the last days, at the end times, you're going to have an abundance of false prophets and false teachers. And we have seen the increase in the cults. Right now, the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Latter-day Saints are going crazy, especially in other countries. They've got major ministries going there, and many people are being deceived and brought into their deceptions through their efforts. So, we need to be aware that we are dealing with false prophets. And they come to you disguised as sheep, but they really are the servants of Satan. Now, the problem we run into is that this is the founding fathers. They know that they were performing deception. The sad thing is that the people that are in the cults now, most of them have been deceived, and they honestly think that they are sheep. So hopefully this will kind of be a little eye-opener for people. Matthew 24:24. "For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall drink water, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect." Now, the elect Jesus is talking about at this point are going to be the Jews, because we shall be taken out, and it's the Jews that will still be there dealing with these false prophets and the false Christ in the tribulation period. So, both the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Latter-day Saints Church place a focus on prophecy. Each of the leaders of the Latter-day Saints Church claims to be a prophet. And the Jehovah's Witnesses do not claim personal prophets, but they do claim to be a prophet as a group or a prophetic group. Now, I gave you an additional handout called 100 Years of False Prophets. And I'm going to be pulling off of this. This was a list that somebody put together that literally shows all the things they put into writing. This is the Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, according to the Jehovah's Witnesses, whatever they publish is the same as coming from God, and therefore it is prophetic. It is gospel. 1972, they had this topic called Identifying the Prophet. So, does Jehovah have a prophet to help them, to warn them of dangers, and to declare things to come? These questions can be answered in the affirmative. Who is this prophet? This prophet was not one man, but a body of men and women. It was a small group of footstep followers of Jesus Christ, known at that time as the International Bible Society. Now they're the Watchtower Tract Society. Today they are known as Jehovah's Christian Witnesses. Of course, it's easy to say that this group acts as a prophet of God. It's another thing to prove it. And this is from the Watchtower. And I love the fact that it is April 1st, April Fool's Day, 1972. They also claim an angel is there to help them and to guide them. They make these claims because it was given to them to have a spiritual authority. It's important that you have spiritual authority. So this class is going to be discussing two topics, one this week and one next week, and that will be wrapping up our module on the cults. This week we're going to be talking about the spiritual authority of the prophets, and next week we're going to be talking about the spiritual authority of the priesthood. So who really has the spiritual authority? How do we obtain the spiritual authority? We're going to be discussing the priesthood in the next class, and the priesthood will deal much more so with the Latter-day Saints. They claim to have the priesthood of Aaron, and they claim to have the priesthood of Melchizedek. And then today's class topic is going to be the prophets. I'm going to touch on the Latter-day Saints and focus on one specific prophecy that was made by Joseph Smith. But first I want to focus on the Jehovah's Witnesses. So let me kind of talk about prophecy and prophets and what the Bible tells us about that. For the law of Moses, a prophet who speaks in the name of the Lord is to be obeyed. So if you claim that you are a prophet, people are required by the law of Moses to listen to you and to respect you and to do what you say. And if you do not honor the prophet of God, God will judge you. So that gives them this added authority. Deuteronomy 18:18 through 19. I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto you, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. Now, understand the office of a prophet does not always predict the future. The idea of prophet comes from the word profess, and they are professing the message that God gives them. And sometimes it is a message for today, and sometimes it is a message for the future. And it shall come to pass that whosoever will not listen to my words, i.e., through the prophet, which he shall speak in my name, I will require it of him. The person who is not listening, the person who does not respect them. We're going to look at what the Bible tells us about a prophet of the Lord. The Bible gives us tests for prophets of God and how to know a true prophet from a false prophet. Now, in the past, I used to always joke about the tabloids. You'd be waiting in the checkout line at the movies or the grocery store. You'd have all these magazines and newspapers there, and they would have all these prophets telling you things. It's like, there's going to be a war this year. Oh, there's going to be famine. Oh, there's going to be an economic collapse. Oh, there's going to be this. Oh, there's going to be that. And you had a whole list of people that were renowned and recognized by the tabloids as prophets. And they were predicting the future. And their prophecies were always very vague and very general. And they kept prophesying one thing one week and then the exact opposite the next week. And this way, whenever something came up, they would claim the one that came true. Oh, look, I predicted that. And they claimed that they were great prophets because they had a 12 to 15% success rate. 12 to 15% of what they taught or preached came true. And I loved it when Jean Dixon, she was the greatest, I think she was up to 15 or 18%, that she passed away. And the headline said, Jean Dixon died unexpectedly. Well, must not be a very good prophet if she didn't see her coming death. I also want to talk about the fact that we have a lot of other prophets now on the internet. And everybody and their brother is claiming to be a prophet of God. And they make all kinds of crazy prophets. I think the biggest prophecy now is judgment is coming. Wow, gee, tell us something we don't know. Oh, look, war is coming. Tell us something new. Oh, look at this. Deception everywhere. Corruption everywhere. Of course. That's what this says. Now, the thing about a prophecy, one, it can't contradict the Bible, but two, it has to say something new. It just can't take what the Bible says and repeat it and say, oh, look, I'm a prophet of God. And you've got people that are making all kinds of prophetic statements out there. The people that are listening to them are not following Scripture. They are not testing the spirits. And they are teaching and repeating what these people on the internet are saying. And you can go to a lot of Christian websites, a lot of Christian Facebook pages, and people are posting links for all these links on Facebook to all these great prophecies, messages, and lessons from God. Well, I'm going to put them in the same category with the ones over in the tabloids. Their success rate is down here. So we're going to be applying the test that both the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Latter-day Saints are claiming. And there is a standard set by the Bible. And this is a standard for a prophet who is being a prophet of God. Deuteronomy 18:20. But the prophet which shall presume to speak a word, notice that, singular, a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or who shall speak in the name of another gods, even that prophet shall die. So, the standard for God's prophecy is that every word has to be of God. And as a result, because every word is spoken by God, that prophecy will come true exactly the way that it was given. If it does not come true in the way it was given, if it is altered in any way, if it does not take place in the time frame given, that is not a prophet of God. You also have to watch out for those that have the self-fulfilled prophecy. I am going to prophesy that at 10 o'clock tonight, I am going to be sleeping in bed. I have complete and total control over that prophecy. I can make it happen. Or I can keep it from happening unless God intervenes and I die this afternoon. The prophet must be correct 100% of the time. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to bring it up here because there was a lady living next door to us when Bev and I were married and living in the married apartments at Cal Baptist. And she was all jazzed. Bev would be heading off to go teach. She was a student teacher, or she'd be heading off to class. And she would come over and she'd say, oh, there's this prophet of God. Now here's the weird thing. The prophet of God she was talking about had the name Chuck Smith. It was not the Chuck Smith of Calvary Chapel. And there are those people who claim that Chuck Smith of Calvary Chapel is a false prophet. That is not exactly correct. He had a teaching that he was teaching, and he had a prophecy that he was interpreting, and he made a mistake in his interpretation. He got the symbol wrong, and therefore the prediction or the lesson did not come the way he was teaching it. That does not make him a false prophet. It makes him a teacher who did not carefully check all of his resources before he gave his message. I don't think God held that against Chuck Smith. Chuck Smith was a great Bible teacher. This is the only thing I have found in his teachings that do not come true. But if you go to the internet, they'll list Chuck Smith at Calvary Chapel as a false teacher. And they will point to this thing that he was saying, oh, the generation that sees the birth of Israel is the generation that is going to see the second coming and the rapture and all these things. And a generation has been 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, up to 100 years. And basically, they were all looking at the 30-year generation. And the rapture did not take place, and so people began to label him as a false prophet.
He never corrected it.
He never figured out, because again, he's got 100 years. And he died before the 100 years came and went.
Yeah.
He was looking at the fig tree symbolically. And the fig tree, according to him, was the nation of Israel. The nation of Israel is not represented in prophecy as the fig tree. The nation of Israel is represented in prophecy as the olive tree. Major difference. The fig tree in prophecy is symbolic of religion. Adam and Eve took the leaves of the fig tree and tried to cover their sin, their nakedness, and to make themselves acceptable to God. That is what religion does. Religion tries to make us acceptable to God through our own efforts. Now, when Jesus presented himself as the Messiah on Palm Sunday, back in 32 AD, the religious leaders rejected his claim without putting it to the test. He came riding in on that donkey the way Zechariah 9:9 predicted. He came in on the exact day predicted by Daniel 9:25. 773,880 days after the signing of the decree to rebuild the walls. He came riding in declaring himself to be the Messiah, and the religious leaders said, shut it down, get out of here, don't cause a problem. Next day, he is coming into the city, and there is this fig tree sitting here on the side of the road. And they tell us in the Gospel of Mark that it is not the time of year for figs. Jesus knew that. So, this is symbolic. It's a lesson or an image of something else. And Jesus comes to the fig tree, and he makes this elaborate show of trying to find a fig anywhere on the tree. And there's not a single fig. And he turns and he curses the fig tree for not producing the fruit. He was symbolically cursing the religion of Israel for failing to produce the fruit of the Messiah appearance. That was the only fruit the Jewish faith was required to produce, was to recognize and identify the Messiah when he appeared. And they failed to do that. And with the cursing of the fig tree, he symbolically curses the religion of Israel. But he also, in that process, is denouncing and setting aside the priesthood of Aaron. And as a result, the priesthood of Melchizedek can now be introduced, and he is a priest after the priesthood of Melchizedek. So, Jesus says, pay attention to the parable of the fig tree. And when it puts forth its leaves, the generation that sees it putting forth its leaves will be that generation which shall see all these things come to pass. Well, Israel put forth its leaves when it was a nation in 1948, but it was not the religion of Israel, and that's where Chuck made his misinterpretation. Now we see the religion of Israel putting forth its leaves. There is a group called the Temple Mount Faithful, and they have reproduced the golden candlestick, the menorah, and I actually touched it. 2006, Temple Institute. They hand me this piece of the menorah, gold, and it is heavy. And they are reproducing the menorah.
Wow.
And they've reassembled it. It is now on display behind protective partitions because it is pure gold in the eastern wall area. You can see it there now. They reproduced the table of showbread. They reproduced the altar of incense. They have reproduced all the garments of the high priest. They have reproduced the garments of the other priesthood. They have reproduced the bronze laver where they wash their feet as they're doing the sacrifices. Then God did his part, because man can always do something, but God stepped in and God brought the red heifer back from extinction. There are now red heifers born in Israel. And I'm not sure how many there. They've been talking about it since back in the 1970s.
I just heard a Jewish lady said that there's 4 red heifers.
Yeah, well, there's probably more than
More
that.
than that, but I mean,
But-
sacrifices that's
Yeah, but
maybe.
in the 1970s, there was a farmer in the United States that had a red heifer born in his herd. And the Jews went crazy.
Yeah.
And they came over and they bought the red heifer. And they were going to take it back to Israel. But with all these things of imports and exports, I guess there's some thing that won't let them export the red heifer. They did their study, they did the research, they went through it with a fine-tooth comb, and they found 3 white hairs on that heifer. And that disqualified it as a sacrifice. And while they're over here taking care of this red heifer, another one is born over in Israel. And they went ecstatic. And so every so often you hear about another red heifer being born. They've been extinct for 2,000 years. You need the red heifer to perform the sacrifice in numbers. And the red heifer is taken outside of the camp. And outside of the camp, it is killed while the high priest watches. So Jesus was taken outside of the camp, outside of Israel, outside of Jerusalem, and he was killed by another, i.e. the Romans, while the high priest watched. This is a picture of Jesus, and he is the head of the church, and they behead the red heifer, cutting off the head of the church, cutting off the head of the red heifer. And then they burn the body of the red heifer and mix its ashes with water, and that is how you sanctify and purify something for God to dedicate. They cannot rebuild the temple and sanctify it to God without the red heifer. So the red heifer came back. There's also the fact that you have to have a certain blue dye for the priestly garments. And you can't reproduce the blue dye. They've tried for thousands of years, they just can't get it right. Well, the last 2 or 3 decades, I guess, they found these snails that they were taking out of the Mediterranean Sea, and they were doing stuff with them, and somebody goofed, and they left for a long weekend without feeding them. When they came back, almost all the snails were dead. And the snails had actually borne into the other snail's shell and attached itself to a certain gland. And they started looking what was in the gland, and they took that substance out, they put it out in the sunlight, and it became the blue dye they needed for the priestly garments. Then somebody goes outside their backyard and they notice this thing on a tree. It's a red splotch. It's like somebody just threw blood against the tree. Well, they rediscovered the blood worm. It had been extinct for thousands of years. And you take the blood worm and it attaches itself to a tree to give life. Another picture of Jesus. It takes it 3 days to die on the tree. And as it is dying, the babies are born and they are covered in the blood. And this is what they use to make the dye for the priestly garments. Then they've been looking for the Levites. Well, God just happened to put a genetic marker in the DNA of every Levite tribe member. So we are seeing the leaves of the religion of Israel coming forth. We are the generation that will see all of these things come true. So, let me get back on track. I get excited, I
That's
start
cool.
wondering.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So, the prophet of God must be correct 100% of the time. A single false prophecy disqualifies that person from being a prophet of God. So, my neighbor was saying, you've got to come see this prophet. And it was like, 4 blocks over at this little church on Tuesday mornings. He would be there and he would teach and he would do prophecies and he would do healings. And I am just a big skeptic. That's just me. And the biggest thing he was really big on was half the people, or most of the people that he brought up had this birth defect that one leg was longer than the other. It's amazing how many people lean. And I'm up front with them, and he says, okay, everybody close your eyes. And he's holding the people's hand, holding their feet up in his hands. You look, and it's kind of like one is longer than the other. And he starts to pray. And I keep my eyes open. And as he is praying, he leans until they line up the same height. Look at this. They're healed. Then you lean back and you got that, and you lean this way, and you got that. But that's what he would do with all of his fantastic healings. And the first Sunday I was there, he basically will call people and have them stand up, and he'll pronounce a prophecy over you. And they have a guy in the back with a cassette tape recording it. And as you leave, they give you the cassette tape. Here's your prophecy. And he had me stand up and he started saying, okay, God is going to use you. God is going to make you a great teacher. God's going to open doors for you, and God's going to lead you and guide you and provide for you. I was like, yeah, that's what we've been praying for. So I take the cassette home, and Bev is a bigger skeptic than I am, and she's going, yeah, right. So next Tuesday, she goes back. And at the end of the service, she goes up to confront. Okay, here's the prophecy. When is this going to come true? And he sat there and started, kind of doing some babbling and stuff, and he started giving 3 separate dates to us. And he turns to Bev and says, Bev, you're going to be a teacher in Jerusalem. So that's great. So we go back home and we wait, and the first date comes and goes, and nothing. Second date comes and goes, and nothing. The third date comes and goes, and nothing. And at this point, the neighbor comes over and says, why aren't you coming to the meetings anymore? I says, because he's a false prophet. Well, that seems kind of harsh. And I explained this to her. I says, he gave us 3 dates, and all 3 dates have come and gone, and nothing has happened. Well, that seems kind of, harsh on your part. You're being kind of closed-minded, aren't you? And I says, the Bible says I only got to give him 1 shot. 1 is all it takes. And he's had 3 shots. And the fact that Beth passed away and never was a teacher in Jerusalem, there were 4 prophecies that he gave that did not come true. So, God has a higher standard. God demands more, like the Hebrew National hot dog commercial. We answer to a higher authority, Hebrew National. The law says you can do this, the law says you can do that. But we're kosher. And there it went. I love that commercial. God will even go so far as to tell you not to listen to the false prophet. Deuteronomy 18:22. When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing follows not, nor comes to pass, that is a thing which the Lord has not spoken. But the prophet has spoken it presumptuously. You shall not be afraid of him. In other words, you can ignore him, you can challenge him, you can question him, and you don't have to worry about God judging you for that. So if the Latter-day Church or the Watchtower Society is proven to be a false prophet, then God is telling us not to listen to them. Now, God is very serious concerning prophecy, and as a result, he holds a very high standard for the prophet of God. Again, 1 false prophecy, 1 mistake, and the prophet was to be put to death. When Bev was pregnant the first time, one of her friends Says, I'm predicting you're going to have the baby by the end of this week. And the week came and went, and Bev did not go into labor. We went to this little novelty shop, bought several little foam rubber rocks, and I met her at church, and we started throwing the rocks at her. False prophet! False prophet! We were very little back then. Deuteronomy 18:20. Even that prophet shall die. God uses prophecy as a way to prove that he exists and that he is in charge. We've done this in other classes, Isaiah 46, 9 through 11. Remember the former things of old, for I am God, and there is no one else. I am God, and there is no one like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times, the things that are not yet done. He is predicting the future, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Yea, I have spoken it, I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed it, I will also do it. So there are no other gods, only God is God, and God can tell us what is going to happen before it happens. If God declares it, God will make it happen. How is this possible? So again, when I taught the class on prophecy in our apologetics class, I gave them this example. Here is my prediction. On December 12th, 4 years from now, if you go to this specific address and you're there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're going to see a Caucasian man, somewhere in his 70s, coming out of the front door. Now, this man is going to be wearing a blue long-sleeve shirt. He's going to have the sleeves rolled up. He's going to be wearing black dress slacks. He's not going to have glasses. He's going to be clean-shaven, and he's going to be partly bald. Wonder who I'm talking about. He's going to open the front door with his left hand, and in his right hand he's going to be carrying a book. And the book he's going to be carrying is going to be the poems of Robert Frost. I liked the book at that time. So, calculate those odds, and it's 1 out of several million to 1. So if I got this right, people would be really impressed with me. So, December 12th, 4 years from now, you go to the address to test my prediction. You got your bag of stones with you just in case I'm wrong. So there you are at 2 o'clock. The man I described exit the house dressed exactly the way I predicted, and he's even carrying the book that I mentioned. But you stop and take a closer inspection, and suddenly you discover, hey, I'm the guy carrying the book. So you're going to be screaming foul, fraud, deceit. I did not predict the future. There's only one reason I knew the future in this case. The reason I knew the future was because I made the future happen exactly the way that I predicted. Crying foul, getting your bag of stones out. I did exactly what God does when he gives you a prophecy. Isaiah 46, 9 through 11 again, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times the things that are not yet done. Question, how can God know the future? Well, they give us all these fancy things. God is not part of our space-time continuum. He sees the past, the present, and future as one vision. He sees them all at once. But it's not just that God knows the future. God causes the prophecy to come true. He's leaving nothing to chance. Isaiah 46:11 again. I have spoken it. I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed it, and I will also do it. So it's not just that God knows the future. God controls the future. This is how God can maintain a standard of being right 100% of the time. Deuteronomy 18 through 19. I will raise up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto you, meaning Moses. I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. And it shall come to pass that whosoever will not listen unto my words when he shall speak in my name, I will require it of him. So, a prophet of God speaks in God's name. He's God's representative, and he is to be obeyed exactly as if he were God. If people don't listen, then God holds them accountable. So a prophet carries a lot of responsibilities. If you want to control people and make them obey you, what greater authority do you have than to speak in God's authority and to claim that you are his prophet? If you say in your heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord has not spoken? How can we tell the false prophet from the true prophet? When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is a thing which the Lord has not spoken. So if they give a prediction and it doesn't happen, they were not speaking on God's behalf. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously, and you shall not be afraid of him. Prophet of God is correct 100% of the time. Even a single prophecy that is false or does not come true proves that the prophet was not of God. If someone is a false prophet, we should not listen to them. We should not obey them. We should not be following them. If we were back in Bible days, we'd be taking that prophet out and stoning them to death. Right now, there's no danger of getting your prophecy wrong. So people that want to be prophets will give you anything and everything as much as they can, as often as they can. But there's also a second test for a prophet. If what they tell you comes true, pay attention to where they are taking you. Are they leading you closer to God, or are they going to lead you away to some other God that you do not know and ask you to serve them? If there arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and they give you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or wonder comes to pass, whereof he spoke unto you, saying, he now says, let us go after other gods which you have not known, and let us serve them. You shall not hearken unto the words of that prophet or of that dreamer of dreams. For the Lord your God is testing you, to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Basically, the passage goes on and it tells us, even if this is your own son or daughter, even if this is your own brother that does this, you are not to spare them, but you are to be the one to expose them, and your hand shall be the first hand to throw the stone to kill them. So if a prophet does predict the future correctly, and then tries to get you to worship some other God than God, you're not to listen. God is testing you. And even if that prophet or dreamer is your own family, your hand shall be the first to cast the first stone and put them to death. You shall not protect them if they do this. If we did this today, boy, we would have a lot of false prophets out there. Now, a major difference between a Bible teacher and a prophet of God, I kind of was doing this talking about Chuck Smith at Calvary Chapel. A teacher looks at Bible passages using research and logic and tries to understand what God is saying in that passage. And then they share this with others. So a Bible teacher is allowed to get it wrong. They're allowed to make a mistake, and they can goof, because they are speaking in their own authority. I can say something and get it wrong. And if I mess up, people look at me as being the screw up, and it's not God. So it's my reputation on the line. It's my reputation at stake. So I'm not taken out and stoned. People may just stop coming to class, and I may be teaching to an empty room. They can even say, God showed me this, but it's not a prophecy. A prophet speaks for God. He's not teaching about God. Bible teachers speak about God, and so they're allowed to make mistakes and get it wrong, and hopefully when they learn the difference, they will come back and correct their teaching. A prophet does not choose to be a prophet. Nobody volunteers for this position, and that is the problem, is that a lot of people are claiming to be prophets of God. They have assumed the title upon themselves, and God is not the one who has made them the prophet. So, a prophet of God is called by God, and only God can make somebody a prophet. If God calls them to be a prophet, then they speak for God. So they're not just an expert on the subject, they just haven't done their research and resources and come to this opinion. They are hearing God speaking directly to them, and God is instructing them to speak for Him. They are speaking for God. They are standing before you in the place of God, and they are to be given the same obedience that you would give to God, which is why God holds them to the higher standard. One mistake and you're dead. So, you need to make it clear that the Latter-day Saint Church and the Watchtower Societies are the ones that are making the claim to be modern-day prophets. They are claiming that God called them to be prophets for them. This claim will also have to be put to the same test if they have made even one prophecy that did not come to pass. They are claiming supernatural forces are leading them and guiding them. If these forces are not of God, and there's only one other source of supernatural influence left to claim, that's Satan. 1 John 4:1, Beloved, believe not every spirit, but test the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone into the world. And people claim, oh, this is a supernatural message. This is how I know it is a supernatural message. Well, that's great. It's a supernatural message. But is it a message from God? You've got to do your homework. This is their claim, not ours. And by claiming to be modern-day prophets, they have placed themselves under the test for a prophet of God. The one true God was founded, the one true church was founded on April 6, 1830 in Fayette, New York. Did you know that? The one true church, April 6, 1830. What did we have from the time of Jesus in 32 AD to present? Well, I guess that wasn't the one true church, even though Jesus made sure that we knew it was His church. That was the original name of the Latter-day Church. Now I love the fact that even here they're saying, oh, God gave us the name for this church. And they claim that the one true church was inspired by God. The prophecy was God told them to call themselves this. And yet before they got done, they now were the Church of Latter-day Saints of Jesus Christ. Went through 3 different name changes before God's message finally became clear enough for them to get it right. So much for prophets. Revelation given to Joseph Smith, the prophet, at Fayette, New York, April 6, 1830. Joseph Smith is called to be a seer, translator, prophet, apostle, and elder. He has all the cool titles after his name on his business card. Doctrine and Covenants 21, 1 through 3. The Watchtower Society placed a great deal of emphasis on the fact that they spoke for God. Anything published in their documents was the same as God speaking to the witnesses. So again, we have this thing, does Jehovah have a prophet? Yes, he does. It's not a group, but it's not an individual, but it's groups of people. They're the Jehovah's Christian Witnesses. And so it's easy to say you're a prophet, but proving it is another thing. So as of April Fool's Day, 1972, that is what their stance is. The Watchtower Society predicted the second coming of Jesus. Not once, but several times. And I love the way they twist things to make it keep working. They gave very specific dates. And Matthew 24:36 says, "But of that day and hour knows no man, no, not the angels in heaven, but my Father only." So if anybody is giving you a date for the second coming or the rapture, that person is not a prophet of God. Despite Jesus specifically declaring no one would know the hour, Watchtower Society began to predict prophecies in their publications and the date of the return. Now, I mentioned last session that the Jehovah's Witnesses are the same as the Seventh-day Adventists when it comes to cults. And that gets people upset. They get really nervous because we've come to accept the Seventh-day Adventists as Christian, just a little bit wonky. Well, they have what's called the investigative judgment. And they teach, as part of their plan of salvation, that when you ask Jesus to save you, it's like filling out an application. And that application goes on file, and Jesus then starts watching you, and you, and you. Oh, and he's got his eyes on you. And he doesn't know if he wants to save you yet or not. It's his option. The Bible says, whoever calls upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. That's a legal imperative. It is mandatory, automatically mandatory. And they're saying, oh no, that's not true. He's going to watch you. And then when you die, he's going to pull up all the records and look at what you've done. And if he doesn't think you've been repentant enough or working enough, he's going to say, oh, sorry, I'm going to decline. You die in the Seventh-day Adventist Church without knowing if you're saved or not. The Jehovah's Witnesses came out of the Seventh-day Adventists. Is it any wonder that the Seventh-day Adventists, their founder, predicted the second coming? And that's where you get this idea of wearing the prayer robes and being on the rooftops waiting for the return. He gave the prediction and it did not come to pass. He was a false prophet. Ellen White came in after him, and she started trying to rewrite all of his teachings and doctrines to salvage the Seventh-day Adventist Church before it collapsed over that false prophecy. So now the Seventh-day Adventists, now coming across in the form of the Jehovah's Witnesses, are setting dates just like their parent church did. As it was printed in their documents, they are claiming that they were speaking for God. In other words, they're claiming to be prophets. Watchtower Society, which I'll identify as WS from now on, predicted in 1914 would mark the overthrow of human government and the full establishment of God's kingdom on earth. Studies in the Scriptures, Volume 2, Watchtower Tract and Bible Society. They did this back in 1888, page 98 through 99. Now they cling to this because somebody got really good. They predicted 1914. And what happened in 1914? The First World War. So it looked like human governments were about to be overthrown. Let me just ask, since 1914, which we've had 100 years of this at least, have we seen God's kingdom here on the earth? Are we living in peace and harmony? Do we hang out with the lions and the asps and the snakes and all the other poisonous creatures? Or do we still have a lot of problems and corruption and sin in the world? 1889, the battle of the great day of God Almighty, mentioned in Revelation 16:14, which will end in AD 1914 with the complete overthrow of the earth's present rulership, is already commenced. The time is at hand, page 101, the 1908 edition. I suspect if you get the current edition, it may not have that prophecy listed. Studies in Scriptures, 1891, refers to the full establishment of the kingdom of God in the earth at AD 1914. Again, they still cling to that date because of World War I. And they're now claiming, oh, it's still here, just the kingdom of God is invisible. Well, what does Jesus say? Matthew 24:23. Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is the Christ, or there, believe him not. And he said, Take heed that you be not deceived, for many shall come in my name, and say, I am the Christ, and the time draws near. Go you not therefore after them. And he talks about if you say he's in a hidden place, which what the JWs are basically saying, oh, he's invisible. When Jesus returns, it's not going to be a secret. This is talking about the second coming, not necessarily the rapture. Luke 17:23-24. And they shall say unto you, See here, or see there, go not after them, nor follow them. For as the lightning which lightens out of the one part of the sky under heaven shines unto the other part under heaven, so shall also the Son of Man be in his day. When he comes, it's going to be like a flash of lightning. You're going to see it, and everybody's going to be aware of what's happening. We were over at Black Bear Diner last week having dinner, and we started having thunder and lightning, and you could tell inside when the lightning flashed. You're going to know when Jesus comes. Everyone will see, everyone will know. Well, they're not done. 1897, our Lord, the appointed King, is now present and has been since October 1874. Wow, Jesus has been in the world since 1874. Studies in Scriptures, Volume 4, page 621. 1916, oh, here we go, World War II is up and running. The Bible chronology herein presented shows that the 6 great 1,000-year days, beginning with Adam, are ended, and that the great 7th day, the 1,000 years of Christ's reign, began in 1873. Time is at hand, page 2 in the foreword. 1918, well, World War II is over. Therefore, we may confidently expect that 1925 will mark the return of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the faithful prophets of old, particularly those named by the apostle in Hebrews 11, to the condition of human perfection. Millions now living will never die. Page 89. What happened in 1914? Well, we're not talking about 1914. We're talking about 1925 now. 1925 is on the horizon. Yeah, we know that's going to do it. It's ironic that the founder, one of the presidents of the Jehovah's Witnesses, actually purchased a mansion down in San Diego, $1 million mansion, under the guise that this was going to be for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob when they come back and they'll have a place to stay.
Wow.
Walter Martin, Dr. Martin, the expert on the cult, said that they had that mansion still there. After the leader of the Jehovah's Witnesses died, they kept the mansion just in case Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob showed up. And he would go by every so often and knock on the door saying, "Are they here yet?" And he says that since then they finally have gotten rid of the mansion. But I thought that was rather humorous on his part. Oh, here it is. The Watchtower Society predicted in 1925 the selected Old Testament prophets, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, would rise from the grave and they would live in San Diego, which is why he had the mansion in San Diego. Again, millions living will never die, from 1920, pages 88 through 90. Now, millions will never die, 1920 says, 1925 will mark the return of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the faithful prophets of old. 1922. The date 1925 is even more distinctly indicated by Scripture than 1914. It's from the Watchtower September 1st, 1922, page 262. 1923, hey, we're getting there, we're getting close. Our thought is that 1925 is definitely settled by the Scriptures. As to Noah, the Christian now has more upon which to base his faith than Noah had upon which to base his faith in the coming flood. That's another April Fool's Day posting. Watchtower, April 1st, 1923, page 106. And here we are. It finally has arrived, 1925. The year 1925 is here. Hallelujah. With great expectation, Christians have looked forward to this year. Many have confidently expected that all members of the body of Christ will be changed to heavenly glory during this year. I'm so encouraged by that statement. This may be accomplished. What? It may not be. Whoa. What? In His own due time, God will accomplish His purpose concerning His people. Christians should not be so deeply concerned about what may transpire this year. Watchtower, January 1st, 1925, page 3. They went into the year knowing it wasn't going to happen. September 25. It is to be expected that Satan will try to interject into the minds of the consecrated the thought that 1925 should have seen an end to the work. What? Watchtower, page 262. Satan interjected this into the minds of the consecrated. So all those teaching and writing and preaching about 1925 being the return and the end of the work were inspired by who? Inspired by Satan. If your leaders are inspired by Satan, how can you trust your leaders? You can't. Well, let's try to do some damage control. 1926. The year has come and gone, and no Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. Some anticipated that the work would end in 1925, but the Lord did not state so. Well, then, why were they stating so? The difficulty was that the friends inflated their imaginations beyond reason, and that when their imaginations burst asunder, they were inclined to throw away everything. Watchtower, 1926, page 232. Oh, here we had a 1931. There was a measure of disappointment. A measure? On the part of Jehovah's faithful ones on the earth concerning the years 1914, 1918, and 1925, which disappointment lasted for a time, and they also learned to quit fixing dates. Vindication, page 338. So, did they quit fixing dates? 1941, receiving the gift, the marching children clasped it to them, not a toy or plaything for idle pleasure, but the Lord's provided instrument for the most effective work in the remaining months before Armageddon. Armageddon is just now months away. Watchtower, 915-41, page 288. Now let's jump up to 1968. Our Kingdom Ministry. 1968 claimed there are only about 90 months, 7.5 years left before the 6,000 years of man's existence on earth is complete. 1968. True, there have been those in times past who predicted the end to the world, even announcing a specific date, yet nothing happened. The end did not come. They were guilty of false prophesying. So, their documents claim that they are false prophets because they announced these end time things. So, they were guilty of false prophesying. Why? What was missing? Missing from such people were God's truth and the evidence that He was using and guiding them. So they're claiming that all the people back at the turn of the century and waiting for these second comings and trusting and believing were false prophets and lacking God's truth. That says a lot about your church right there. That's their Awake magazine, 10/8/1968. Well, so if they learned their lesson, 1968, why are you looking forward to 1975? Watchtower, 8/15/1968, page 494. And here we have the one he just said about identifying the prophet. Does Jehovah have a prophet to help them and warn them? These answers are affirmative. Not an individual prophet, but a body of men and women. The Watchtower Society, Jehovah's Witnesses. It's one thing to say you're a group as a prophet, another thing to prove it. April Fools, 1972. Watchtower Society predicted that in 1975, human history would end and the 1,000-year reign of Christ would begin. And we were taking the class with Dr. Martin at this time, and these were some of the fun things they were telling us. So Awake Magazine, October 8th, 1966, page 19. Deuteronomy 18:21. If you say in your heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord has not spoken? Verse 22, when a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing follows not, nor comes to pass, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken. But the prophet has spoken it presumptuously, you shall not be afraid of him. Jehovah's Witnesses have stopped setting dates, at least as far as I know. I haven't heard any new dates. But 75 came and went. We were still there in the class when it came and went, and nothing happened. It does not wipe out their prior history when they claim to be speaking prophetically in the name of the Lord and were proven to be wrong. They are still classified as false prophets. Latter-day Saints Church has a similar problem. However, I'm going to focus on just one prediction made by Prophet Joseph Smith. After all, he is the one who claimed that God made him a prophet. I want to go back to one of his ancestors and one of his descendants, Joseph Fielding Smith. He is a descendant of Prophet Joseph Smith. He was a president of the Latter-day Saint Church. We discussed this in our first session in class. This is his quotation. If Joseph Smith was a deceiver who willfully attempted to mislead people, then he should be exposed. His claims should be refuted, and his doctrines shown to be false. For the doctrines of an impostor cannot be made to harmonize in all particulars with divine truth. So, we don't have to refute all the leaders of the Latter-day Saints Church. We just need to refute their founder, Joseph Smith. Mormonism, as it is called, must stand or fall on the story of Joseph Smith. He was either a prophet of God, divinely called, properly appointed and commissioned, or he was one of the biggest frauds this world has ever seen. There is no middle ground. So for all of you Latter-day Saints out there watching this on the home channel, this is important. He was either the prophet of God or he was a fraud. You don't have a third option. And this was said by Joseph Fielding Smith, your president of the Latter-day Saints, Doctrines of Salvation, Volume 1, page 188. Following discussion is based upon a prophecy Joseph Smith made. And they did the research and made a book called An Expose of Mormonism by Eric Greishaber. And this was found on the Blue Letter Bible. So it's available today if you want to go there, but I pillaged what I could for the class. Hearken, O you elders of my church. Notice even It's not King James and it's not King James time. Joseph Smith is still speaking in the King James English. Hearken, O ye elders of my church, saith the Lord your God, who have assembled yourselves together according to my commandments in this land, which is the land of Missouri. Missouri? Which is the land I have appointed and consecrated for this gathering of saints. Missouri? Where are they now? They're in Utah. Utah is not Missouri. Wherefore, this is the land of promise and the place for the city of Zion. And thus says the Lord your God, if you will receive wisdom, here is wisdom. Behold, the place which is now called Independence is the center place, and a spot for the temple is lying westward, upon a lot which is not far from the courthouse. Doctrines and Covenants, section 57, 1 through 3. Again, from Doctrines and Covenants, Joseph Smith, the prophet, makes this statement when he is actually speaking on September 23rd, 1832, and they are in Kirkland, Ohio. So they're not in Missouri still. A revelation of Jesus Christ unto his servant Joseph Smith, Jr., and 6 elders as they united their hearts and lifted their voices on high. Yea, the word of the Lord concerning his church, established in the last days for the restoration of his people, as he has spoken by the mouth of his prophets, and for the gathering of his saints to stand upon Mount Zion, which shall be the city of New Jerusalem, which shall be built, beginning with the temple lot, which is appointed by the finger of God in the western boundaries of the states of Missouri, and dedicated by the hand of Joseph Smith, Jr., and others, with whom the Lord was well pleased. Verily, this is the word of the Lord, that the city, New Jerusalem, shall be built by the gathering of the saints, beginning at this place, even the place of the temple, which temple shall be reared in this generation. That is going to be a big problem for him and his his prophecy. For verily, this generation shall not pass away until the house shall be built unto the Lord, and a cloud shall rest upon it, which cloud shall even be the glory of the Lord, which shall fill the house. And the nations of the earth shall honor her, and shall say, surely Zion is the city of our God, and surely Zion cannot fall, neither be moved out of her place. For the Lord is there, and the hand of the Lord is there. Doctrines and Covenants, section 84, 1 through 5. Again, the revelation given through Joseph Smith, the prophet, at Kirkland, Ohio, August 2nd, 1833. Zion shall not be moved out of her place. So that means they can't build it anywhere else. This is the place they have to build. Notwithstanding, her children are scattered. So even if God moves all the Latter-day Saints somewhere else, they're coming back to Zion at this spot, and they're going to build the temple there. They that remain and are pure in heart shall return and come to their inheritance, they and their children, with songs of everlasting joy, to be built upon in the waste places of Zion. Behold, there is none other place appointed. Again, can't move it somewhere else than that which I have appointed. Neither shall there be any other place appointed than that which I have appointed for the work of the gathering of my saints. Doctrines and Covenants, section 107, 17 through 20, and 12, 16, 18, 33, page 172. And when the saints were driven out from Jackson County, that's where they were doing all this, Almost all the church expected that they would almost speedily be restored. And a person was considered almost an apostate that they would say they would not return in 5 years or 10 at the furthest. The people think of almost everything else but the redemption of Zion and speak to individuals about it, and they put it off as a great distance ahead. But I do not feel to go to this extreme. I will give you my opinion. Oh, there's somebody's opinion. So far as the revelation goes, and speaking on the subject, I think that this event is nearer than these people are aware of. 1845, after the death of Joseph Smith, Journals of Discourse, Volume 3, page 17, Discourse by Elder Orson Pratt, May 20th, 1855. So, now another elder is coming forth and endorsing the prophecy of Joseph Smith. They are holy places, and they will be held sacred even as Jackson County. And I shall yet see the day that I go back there with Brother Brigham Young, and with the thousands and millions of others, and we will go precisely according to the dedication of the prophet of the living God. Talk to me about my having my dubiety on my mind about these things being fulfilled. I am just as confident of it as I am of being called to be a savior of men, and no power can hinder it. And I find it interesting, he called himself a savior of men, as if he were the savior. This is a different president, 1857, President Herbert Kimball, Journals of Discourses, Volume 6, page 190. I expect to live to be an old man, and to go back to the saints to the land of Jackson County. President B. Young, God granted, 1857. That would be Brigham Young, by the way. Journals of Discourse, Volume 6, page 221. Brethren, I shall go to Jackson County with thousands of this people who will be faithful to their integrity. But we cannot go back until we have built some good houses. So he's explaining the fact they've got to do some other work here first. 1861, Journals of Discourses, again, Herbert C. Kimball. Who is there that is prepared for this moment back to the center stake of Zion? Oops. And where are the architects among us that are qualified to erect this temple and the city that shall surround it? Let me remind you that this is predicted that this generation shall not pass away till a temple shall be built, and the glory of the Lord rest upon it, according to the promise. This was in 1861 by Elder George Smith in Journals of Discourse. So we've got several elders and founding fathers and leaders of the church. The day is near when a temple shall be reared in the center stake of Zion. And the Lord has said his glory shall rest on that house in this generation. It is the generation in which the revelation was given, which is upward of 30 years ago. So again, 30 years is one of the signs of a generation. So they're kind of, trying to re-encourage themselves. This is Elder George Cannon, and this was in 1864. We have just as much confidence in returning to Jackson County and the building of the great city that will remain there 1,000 years before the earth passes away, as the Jews have in returning to Jerusalem and rebuilding the waste places of Palestine. In fact, we have more faith than they have, for they have been so many generations cast out of their land that their descendants have almost lost their faith in returning. But the latter-day saints are fresh, as it were. There are many of the old stock who passed through all those tribulations I have named, still living, whose faith in returning to Jackson County and the things that are coming as a firm and fixed as the throne of the Almighty. Our friend Orson Pratt again, And he made this prediction in 1870. Keep in mind that Israel returned in 1948. It may be reasonable to assume that in giving this revelation to the prophet, the Lord did have in mind the generation of people who were still living with 100 years from the time of the announcement of the revelation. Because when God is talking to Abraham, he mentions the children of Israel should be in Egypt for 4 generations. And how long were the children in Egypt? They were there for 400 years. So 1 generation can equal 100 years by that measurement, which again, why Chuck Smith had not yet passed that 100-year mark. And that they should enjoy the blessing of the temple, and the glorious cloud would rest upon it. It is also reasonable to believe that no soul living in 1832 is still living in mortality on the earth. Again, this is Joseph Fielding. He's saying this in 1972. Has the temple ever been built on the site? Well, we've gone for the 20 years, we've gone for the 30 years, we've gone for the 40 years, we went for 50, and we went for 100. And as you saw in the last slide, Joseph Fielding Smith made the declaration, there is not a soul left alive that was present when this prophecy was given in 1832. So that generation, no matter how you want to measure it, has passed by the declaration of Joseph Fielding Smith. Has the temple ever been built on the site in Jackson County identified by Joseph Smith? Nope, temple is still not on this location. So what does this tell us about Joseph Smith as a prophet of God? Keep in mind the other warning and test for a prophet of God. If what they say does come true, do they lead you off to worship other gods? As we've demonstrated in our lesson on who is Jesus and who is God, the God of the Latter-day Church that wants you to worship is not the Jesus and God of the Bible. They are leading you off to worship gods that we do not know, and just that would make them a false prophet. We should not listen to them. So, we've examined the spiritual authority of the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Latter-day Saints Church that resides in a prophet of God. Based upon the evidence, both organizations have delivered prophecies that failed to come true the way it was presented in the name of the Lord. This means that both Jehovah's Witnesses and the Latter-day Saint Church have failed the test for being a prophet of God. They both now bear the label of false prophet. They may be getting supernatural information from a supernatural source, but that source is not God. As such, we must reject them and their teachings as prophets of God, and therefore they have no authority. We are not to listen to them, we are not to believe them, and we are not to follow them. Let's close in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for making this as plain as you can, Father. They are not prophets of you. They do not speak on your behalf. The messages they are presenting to the world are not your messages, Father, but your messages are in the Bible. And we need to present your message, Father, and to reject their messages and to reject them. Now, Father, give us wisdom in this. Give us opportunity to share this with those who are in deception. And let us be able to bring them out of the deception and into your truth. We ask this all in Jesus' name. Amen.